Google's got game, or at least a game controller. The web turns 25, and its creator calls for a web bill of rights. The NSA is caught spreading malware with fake Facebook servers, and it looks like a new Google store is coming to New York City. Coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
It's Wednesday, March 12th, 2014, and this is Tech News Today. This episode is sponsored by ShareFile. Enhance your workflow, send files of almost any size easily and securely with ShareFile by Citrix. Try ShareFile today. For a 30-day free trial, go to sharefile.com, click the microphone, and enter TNT. And by NatureBox, where you can order great-tasting, healthy snacks delivered right to your door. Forget the vending machine and get in shape with healthy, delicious treats like Southern Barbecue Sunflower Kernels. To get 50% off your first box, go to naturebox.com/twit. That's naturebox.com/twit. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Mike Elgin.
I'm Jason Howell.
On Tech News Today, we explore the big stories of the day in conversation with some of the world's leading journalists. Our guest today is David Corsi, a writer, broadcaster, event host, industry analyst, and all-around good guy. He's also a business consultant. How's it going, David?
Good morning. Always a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. Let's jump right into the news. Pando Daily's James Robinson published an exclusive yesterday saying that Google bought some of the assets from a company called Green Throttle Games. James only had a few minutes, so we have him up the top of the show here. So, James, welcome.
Hi. How you doing?
I'm doing great. So what was Green Throttle Games exactly, and what did Google buy?
Green Throttle Games was a console that worked with an Android app that sort of came in during the little sort of bubble of independent game hype in 2012. And so the company never really got traction and eventually sort of took the app off the market in 2013. And so Google really bought technology and staff, so sort of some of the brains behind it. They've two of the three original founders have joined Google, and obviously taking along some of the technology with them.
So why would Google want this? Couldn't they have built all this stuff themselves and made hires similar to the hires that they made in acquiring this company?
Well, what I'm hearing around the story is with the race to sort of build the perfect set-top box and sort of take control of the TV screen is sort of really starting to heat up this year. And sort of a lot of the hype for Google is that, their set-top box offering could really be anchored around being a gaming unit as well. So I think sort of trying to get the best Bluetooth technology and sort of have that controller potentially work as just be as out of this world as they can make it. I think that was a huge sort of motivation behind the purchase.
I think it's interesting that this product that they had, or this group of products, enabled people to use it's basically an Xbox-style controller where you could play Android games on a TV. That sounds like the kind of thing that Google would be really interested in, but this company sounds like it was really badly run. They sold a $40 Atlas Bluetooth controller that could play these games. They also had an app called Arena, and somehow, if I understand the details here, they continued to sell the controller but didn't have the app anywhere available since November, so that anybody buying the controller couldn't use it. Is that correct? And what were they doing there?
Well, sort of the kind of the ghost of Green Throttle, as I referred to it, they're not really making any comment at the moment, but that's what it appears. If you go to their company Facebook page, there's a lot of sort of disgruntled remarks from customers who have bought the controller since November and not been able to use it. And I mean, there's a customer service line, but there's no one's answering it. So it seems like they really just sort of disappeared without kind of officially ending. And there were a few unhappy guys in the wake of that.
Yeah, I actually worked for a startup many years ago, maybe 12 years ago, and the economy crashed, everything collapsed, the funding dried up, and everybody in the company just kind of wandered away. That actually happens. I remember visiting the office where I worked about a month after everything fell apart, and there was a pile of Wall Street journals in front of the door. Nobody was even Yeah, everything, the coffee cups, everything were right where everybody had left them. So I guess this sort of thing happens. Now, of course, this is a Santa Clara-based company. Santa Clara is in Silicon Valley. They launched in late 2012. And they also had some fairly prominent founders who, I believe 2 of the 3 founders will now be working for Google. But tell us a little bit about a couple of their founders.
Well, Charles Huang, who was one of the founders, he, made a huge splash before this with Guitar Hero,
Right.
which was, a huge deal. I believe his company, Red Octane, got, bought for a lot, and, Guitar Hero was huge in the game space, and he's since gone on to sort of do quite well with a karaoke machine that sort of auto-tunes the voice of the people that sing it, which sounds like a fun device. And the other 2 founders worked for Palm, with the portable.
Yeah, they worked on the
assistant
Palm
space.
Pilot itself, didn't they?
Yeah, they worked on sort of the original iteration of that. So I mean, they bought sort of a great track record in here. It was something that sort of looked good. It was an early leader in the space. They got a lot of investment money when others in the game space had to go the Kickstarter route. But it just seems that the idea never really took hold. And I think a lot of these other games companies, from the looks of things, are starting to sort of struggle to really find their foothold, as a lot of these larger companies are kind of starting to reimagine our relationship with screens and start to try and move into the living room. And so, I think, it seems like a logical development that some of this technology would get rolled into this larger movement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's pretty clear that all of the big players, apparently including Google, almost certainly including Amazon, possibly including Apple, will be coming out with TV boxes that play games. They're going to have game ecosystems. And so I think that by the time the holidays rolls around, it's going to be a tough choice to decide what to buy for the living room. And that's a good thing for consumers. I want to thank you for coming on today, and I also congratulate you for your exclusive.
Oh, thanks, Mike, and thanks for having me on the show.
All right, thanks again. You can find him at pando.com and also on Twitter at Jal Robinson, J-A-L Robinson. Well, in a sec, we're going to talk about an amazing anniversary that affects everyone and everything. But first, I want to tell you about ShareFile. If you send sensitive documents as attachments over the web, over the internet, via email, I got one question for you. Are you nuts? That is a crazy thing to do. Email is completely insecure, and you should not be sending anything that you don't want to lose or be compromised as a simple attachment. The right way to do it is to use ShareFile. Just go to sharefile.com and check it out immediately. Here at work, we send countless emails all day to coworkers and clients. Of course, here at TWiT, we send huge files because we got a lot of video stuff going on. And so how do you send gigantic files? How do you send a 6 or 7 or 8 gigabyte file? Well, you do it with ShareFile. It's very easy to do. You simply upload it to their secure server. You send what is essentially a link to that, and only the people that you've intended to receive it can see and download that file. Once they've downloaded it, you're informed that they've downloaded it. So if you want to start a conversation after somebody's seen a document, for example, you know exactly when to start that conversation, and you won't be harassing people before they are ready to talk about it. You can even determine how many times a file is downloaded. Like, for example, once. You download it once, that's the only chance you get, and nobody can download it after that, not even the intended recipient. It's really a great service, and it's also a very easy to use service. You know, some people just use ShareFile to send gigantic files. Other people use ShareFile to send very sensitive files like financial documents, that sort of thing. But really, I tend to use it for all kinds of things. I use it for sending pictures. It's just really easy to just send a large number of pictures to somebody. And, you know, those are neither secure nor are they particularly large, but it's such an easy to use service that I enjoy using it for all of those purposes. You really don't want to just send an attachment over email. Those days are gone. So sign up today for my 30-day free trial, no obligation. Just go to sharefile.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and enter TNT. And remember, that's sharefile.com, and type in TNT. Well, today is the web's birthday. The web turns 25. World Wide Web inventor Tim Berners-Lee wrote the first draft proposal for the hyperlinked information management system that would one day usher in the web, and with it Facebook, Google, cloud computing, and most importantly, TWiT and Tech News Today. To mark the anniversary, Berners-Lee is calling for a Magna Carta, or Bill of Rights, for the web to protect its independence from censorship, surveillance, and control. Now, David, this is quite an anniversary. You and I have been around for a little while. I think you might even be in your late 30s. I'm certainly in my late 20s, so I remember this. What are some of your earlier memories? You started to talk about it before the show, some of your early memories of the funky web when it was in its infancy.
Well, when we first got started, my big memory is there was some sort of a school teacher in Norway who had a website that was called The Familien, whatever his last name was, and that was the site that we all used for demos. And you looked at it and said, gee, do you think that's something I could do? All written in HTML, had pictures, you know, some graphics and stuff, a very primitive website. But at the time, the idea that, you know, you and I could do something like that was just incredible. Now, of course, how many presences do I have on the web? You know, 10, 15 maybe, an awful lot.
Yeah, it's really astonishing how this has turned from hardly anything to almost everything. People tend to equate the web with the internet. And of course, before the web came along, lots of us were using the internet. We're using Archie and Veronica and all this kind of stuff that nobody remembers how to do anymore. And of course, why would you? The first web browser opened to the public in 1991, but you couldn't do anything with it. The first actual browser was in 1992, and I think the first graphical browser was in 1993 by Mark Andreessen, and that was on Windows. And, you know, it was such an alien concept back in the early 90s. I remember trying to explain it to people by saying, it's like a Windows help file. Because Windows help files back then had hyperlinks, and it was one of the few hyperlink-based things. And people said, well, I don't really get it. I don't really understand. And eventually people became massive. Now, how massive?
And Ted, what's his name, was the expert in hypertext. Do you remember that? Used to write books about, and you have text that links to other text, and it's sort of like a thesaurus, but it's not quite like a thesaurus. An interesting thing about this is the web has had a reasonable ability to keep reinventing itself. One of the problems we have in technology is sometimes the very first idea sticks and becomes very difficult to change later on. Berners-Lee has said he wouldn't have, I believe, the double slashes in URLs if he had it to do all over again. You know, what's in the web now that we really should change, but we're sort of stuck with? Yeah, that would be an interesting thing to look at.
It is, and there's a larger issue here, which is that when the internet itself and when the web was first formed, you didn't have all these companies with vested interests and billions of dollars at stake meddling with everything and trying to control everything. A person like Tim Berners-Lee could actually build this thing, and it had a nice runway for many, many years before corporations and later governments got involved and started meddling with everything. And you know, how important is the web now? Well, here's an interesting set of statistics. People send hundreds of millions of messages, share 20 million photos, and exchange at least $15 million worth of goods and services every minute of every day, 24 hours a day on the web. And so it is massively important. It's the world's central communications space. And for that reason, Tim Berners-Lee is calling for this Magna Carta, this day of calling for a protection of the web from all the invasions by governments and by corporations. And if you want to hear more about this, you can go to Reddit. Tim Berners-Lee is doing an AMA at noon Pacific today. That's 3 p.m. Eastern time. And of course, that's an interesting thing. You can also send birthday greetings by going to web@25.org. That's web@25.org. And you can send a message of, you know, happy birthday, World Wide Web. And this is a really interesting kind of a proposal Tim Berners-Lee is doing, where he's trying to attack and tackle the copyright and other societal issues around the web, and essentially keep it the way it was years ago, before the NSA was surveilling everybody on the web, before corporations were trying to harvest everybody's information on the web, before hackers and others were constantly exploiting people on the web. And so it's a great proposal. I think it's very welcome. Now, one of the things he's calling
very late. I mean, Sir Tim, you know, you wish somebody would have thought of this.
Yeah,
like 3 years into the web, but of course, hindsight is 20/20.
Yep.
And Sir Tim could never have imagined. Well, I guess you could have, but who would have believed him that all of this was going to happen. And today there are so many commercial interests and so many governmental interests that a Magna Carta for the internet that people actually follow is about like the United Nations declaring world peace and having it break out simultaneously globally. It's important, it matters, it's good to fight the fight, it's good to have the conversation, but it just doesn't matter very much.
Well, part of this is to consider web access a fundamental human right. And in fact, I believe that it already is. If you look at Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it already says that people can't be meddled with, that it's a human right for them to get information wherever it is that they're trying to get it. And I think that would include the web. But of course, this proposal calls for other things as well. So I think it's a very timely initiative.
I think there are parts of the world where after we get the food, water, medicine, healthcare thing right, maybe they'll think about the web, except that so many of those people in those places now have smartphones that they have web access. And I was doing some work for Intuit once, and they were talking about how in India, how in Kenya, that they're enabling smartphones to give farmers the ability to participate in the markets at a level they never could before to get better prices for their goods. So, I mean, I sort of make fun saying, yeah, there are lots of things more important than the internet, but once you have it, even delivered over your smartphone, it can be an incredibly enabling thing.
Absolutely. Well, in other news, the tech pubs are reporting on Apple's release of iOS 7.1, talking about bug fixes, enhancements, and support for Apple's CarPlay initiative, mostly. But one overlooked feature is a major improvement to Apple's iBeacon system. Doug Thompson is a tech blogger, entrepreneur, and co-founder of Locolo. Am I pronouncing that right, Doug?
Locolo, that's right.
Locolo, okay. Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, before we get into what's new about iBeacon, can you briefly explain what iBeacon is and how it works?
Sure. So iBeacon is based on the Bluetooth low energy specification, also called Bluetooth Smart. You put a little beacon up on the wall of a store, and it's an interesting follow-up to the discussion about Berners-Lee and the Magna Carta, because in this case, we're bringing the web to the customer who walks in the front door of a store or of an art gallery. A beacon transmits a small piece of data that allows your phone to recognize where it is in the world, and then interactions can happen on your phone. So a simple retail example, I'm walking through a clothing store, I walk into the shoe department, and my phone gets a notice of a special on shoes, and it's facilitated because of Bluetooth LE or iBeacon technology.
Now, that's a classic example when people talk about iBeacon. They talk about the retail experience. Of course, this is already deployed in lots of places, Macy's and department stores. You can see it working in a mall. It'd be, great for the store owners because they can sort of promote things. It should be good for some customers because they can find out about things. Apple, of course, has deployed it in their own Apple stores. You have to be running the app and you have to give permission for interaction for this to happen. But of course, I think this is also something that people are going to see in home automation. And certainly you hear the buzzword, the Internet of Things. I think iBeacon is going to be a big player in that. Now, so what is new in iBeacon? What did Apple update in the 7.1 release?
Yeah, the big change is actually contradicts what you just said, which is that the app does not need to be open or active. So if I download the app for, let's say, a concert venue, so long as the app remains on my phone, it will continue to range for beacons. And this is also true of geofences. So Apple has allowed developers to launch apps that use geofences or iBeacon technology. And even if those apps are closed, even if I've shut the phone down, and so long as the app remains on my phone, it will continue to listen for beacons or geofences.
Even if you shut it down and then restarted it, you mean?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So unless I explicitly go into my settings and toggle off location tracking, or toggle off notifications, or turn Bluetooth off, my phone will still listen for beacons and it will still listen for geofences.
So that's the default mode, is to be listening.
That's right. So long as I download the app, a retailer still needs to figure out a way to get a customer to download an app, but I no longer have to worry about somehow getting the consumer to open the app, leaving it in the background tray, or actually having the app open. They also made some pretty significant improvements to how beacon detection works. It's more responsive, it's faster. And while retail is a great example, I think even South by Southwest is using beacons for an experience at the event. But everything can be a beacon. So my phone can also be a beacon. Your phone could be a beacon, and we could detect that we're in proximity of each other, even if we don't have a specific app open.
That's fascinating. And is there a risk for hacking, do you think, because of this new feature?
I don't think there's a risk for hacking. I mean, like any technology, you need to build security against your use case. Bluetooth LE was originally developed for the hospital environment, so it had security in mind when it was developed. I think the bigger risk is whether consumers will accept a technology that might be pushing the messages as they walk down the street.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you for joining us and explaining these changes in iBeacon.
Thanks, Mike.
All righty. You can find Doug at mylocolo.com. That's MYLOCOLO.com. And also on Twitter at DUSANWriter. Well, the NSA is reportedly spreading malware by using fake Facebook servers. The distribution of this malware could be automated and deployed at a massive scale. The payloads themselves could be tailored to covertly record audio from a computer's microphone and take pictures with its webcam, and could also track Skype and other voice-over IP calls, among other capabilities. This information was reported in an exclusive this morning in The Intercept, which exists to report news from documents uncovered by NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden. Now, this is yet another shocking revelation, another day, another shocking revelation from the Edward Snowden documents. And David, this basically the way this works is that you have a link on Facebook. Somebody clicks thinking they're going to go to another location on Facebook. They go actually to a spoofed version of Facebook, which is actually a malware site where something is downloaded to their system, enabling access by the NSA or by an automated process to do various things. This is really an astonishing capability. They've been working on it for a long time. The code name, I love the code names. I love these NSA code names. They're so wonderful. The particular code name for the Facebook one is Quantum Hand. And this became operational in October of 2010. And, of course, they've also spread malware the old-fashioned way via email. And also they may have spoofed Google pages, so we don't really know about that in particular, but we know that they have spread malware in this way via email. This is a pretty astonishing capability, especially, David, to the extent that they've automated it and made it a sort of industrial strength.
Well, let me take the other side of this. I have shock and astonishment fatigue in a really big way. When this first got started, yeah, it was new and interesting. Now it just kind of comes tumbling out, week by week by week by week. And it's a little bit like being pecked to death by a duck. It's little and goes on and goes on and goes on. I, for one, am a lot more afraid of Google and Facebook than I am of the NSA. I know what the NSA wants and what they're likely to do. And unless you believe we're about to be taken over by a new generation of Nazis, which I suppose is possible, the information is relatively safe against being used against you and me. What is missing in Edward Snowden's narrative is lots of bad things happening to ordinary people because of all of this. On the other hand, Google and Facebook follow me around wherever I go on the internet to deliver me ads and stuff, mostly for things I really don't care about and only clicked on once. So I have a piece posted that says maybe Google needs an Edward Snowden to tell us what Google is really up to more than the NSA needs more Edward Snowden.
Well, it's an interesting point you brought up, and I think that the fact is that, yeah, there are two components to this. The first is, what am I afraid of personally? I'm not doing anything wrong that I know of, that I can think of offhand. Maybe I am, who knows? I have got nothing to hide. I'm not a drug kingpin. I'm not a terrorist and so on. So what do I have to hide from the NSA? But the same goes for other Fourth Amendment protections and other constitutional protections. I mean, if I have nothing to hide, why should the police require a warrant to come into my house? Why don't they just come in? I mean, I got nothing to hide. So there's that argument. So there's a political component that is about containing the power of government, the reach of government. We've noticed, we've heard this week that the CIA is actually messing around with the Senate's servers, deleting documents, reading things that they're not supposed to be reading. And that's a pretty clearly, if the reports are accurate, a gross violation of the separation of powers.
Oh, I think Senator Feinstein, if what she's saying is correct, and I have no reason to believe that the narrative isn't basically correct, is on to something that really matters. Finally, we're on to something that really matters. The bad guys have changed the rules. The world has changed. What the founders imagined is not what we're experiencing today. You know, I said a long time ago that if you want to read my email, that's great if it will keep sarin gas out of the Transbay Tube under San Francisco Bay. Fine, read my email, have a good time, run it through your virus checker to make sure I'm not a terrorist. That's cool. But I do think the issue of the CIA not living up to its agreements with the Congress for oversight, I think that's a much bigger deal than most of what Edward Snowden has so far reported. And I wish Senator Feinstein the very best because, you know, previously she said our brave men and women of the NSA are doing a great job. We shouldn't be afraid of them. Now she comes down and says, but yeah, there are times when bad things happen. And I think that's a fairly balanced view of what's been going on.
She was all in favor of it when they were just hacking you and me, and not so much in favor of it when they started hacking her. Different organizations there, of course, but still same basic concept. Now, you know, the larger issue, I mean, you touched upon the central sort of controversy, if there is one, about this. I mean, I think the vast majority of people are largely against the kind of mass surveillance. The difference being whether, you know, the difference between surveillance and mass surveillance is that with mass surveillance, it's essentially a hunting expedition. Everybody's a suspect until, you know, potentially. So let's just harvest all the information, find out if people are up to no good, use this harvest information or metadata or whatever it is they're gathering, in this case using malware potentially, and sort of testing to see whether people are guilty or not. That's the kind of the opposite, if you think about it, of regular surveillance, where you have to have serious probable cause, you have to have good reason, you have oversight, usually judicial oversight, where a judge has to say, yeah, look, they look pretty guilty. Why don't you? Here's permission to go check it out more. With this mass, you know, the whole point of this program that we're talking about here today with the malware is that it's done on a massive scale. Of course, malware has been around for a while. The U.S. government has done some amazing, technically amazing things with malware, especially with Stuxnet and so on in Iran. But again, there's a difference between targeting suspects and suspecting everyone. Those are very, very big things.
But there's also the point that if you don't have the information and the resources in place when something awful like a bombing at the Boston Marathon happens, you can't suddenly go get that information. That if you're not collecting it and have it in a library where you can query it and say, well, we now have a suspect, we now have probable cause, we now have gotten a warrant from whomever, or maybe it is happening in such real time that you're going to have to get the warrant 24 hours, 48 hours later, as is provided for in some laws. Now, who is this guy talking to? Who did he get off the phone with yesterday? Where has he traveled? Who are his friends? Is this really a bad guy? Probably not. Or is it the bad guy? And if so, how do we catch this person? And I think that, you know, you look at an emergency, and when an emergency happens, suddenly people are saying, do everything you can to catch those bad guys, and they don't really care what surveillance took place. So I think we need controls. No question we need controls. We need warrants. We need oversight. We need meaningful oversight. But we also need the ability to collect the library of data that we need to query to find out things in a hurry when something bad happens.
Very quickly, is Edward Snowden a hero or a villain?
Edward Snowden is a traitor.
Okay.
Edward Snowden, I think, should be shot by a firing squad.
Okay.
It's his watch. He stopped being a watchdog when he started telling bad guys how we do things.
Okay. I disagree with that, but I don't think he's a hero either. I think he's neither hero nor traitor. I think he's a bit of an opportunist, but I'm very, very glad that he did what he did, because I think we really, really need to know this stuff. And of course, The Intercept is a great source for that, because this entire site has been devoted to writing news stories and pouring through the documents to write stories like this. And of course, we can't have oversight unless the public has a certain amount of information. So, so I'm in favor, certainly, of The Intercept. I'm on the fence about Edward Snowden, but again, I'm really glad that he did what he did. Well, is it not as exciting as a mystery barge? But Crain's reported yesterday that Google is close to signing a lease on Green Street in New York's Soho neighborhood, just around the corner from an Apple store. Now, this is interesting because Google's a cloud company mostly. It's not really clear what they're going to be selling. Presumably Google Nexus phones, possibly a Google Nexus smartwatch. Of course, they can show off, they can have screens showing off their cloud services and sell Google Glass. David, is there any way that that a retail store for Google could possibly make sense? Because it doesn't make sense to me.
Google has this problem that whenever it has to deal with real human beings one-on-one, it fails. It doesn't know what to do. The engineering culture that we can do everything in a very mass, very technological way has worked for Google on the internet. But, you know, Google's forays into social media have been sort of laughable. Google does exactly one thing well, and that's where they make their money, and that's search, and that's ultimately where they are vulnerable by somebody who does search better. A little like Tim Berners-Lee invents the internet, and then somebody's going to invent Internet 2 at some, well, there already is one, but someone's going to do a better version at some point, and maybe we'll slide over to that. Yeah. Google doesn't do human beings very well, so I would be shocked to see that they do retail very well.
I would agree with you up to a point, but I am a huge fan of Google+. I think it's vastly and conspicuously superior to Facebook. I wish more people would, a lot more people would use it. I wish everyone would use it. But up until Google+, I'd agree with you that they haven't done very good with the people part of it. Well, Twitter crashed again yesterday and was out for about a half an hour. Big deal, right? Well, Wired columnist Matt Honan thinks it's a very big deal. In an opinion column posted today called Why Twitter Can't Keep Crashing, Matt pointed out why Twitter is just too important these days to allow it to crash like it did back when it was an irrelevant plaything for Silicon Valley access journalists. He joins us today, Matt, and I want to welcome you and also apologize for keeping you on the phone all this time. I told you we have you on earlier than this, and again, I apologize, but I do welcome you.
No worries. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So why do you believe, as you wrote in your piece, that Twitter is, quote, a core component of the global communication system?
I think that it's something that people are starting to use in that way, and not just starting to use, are using in that way, and have the expectation that it's going to always be up. Twitter has certainly made assurances that the fail whale days were behind them. They've even deleted the fail whale from their servers. And it's being used in places like the Ukraine and Venezuela to organize, to disseminate information. Twitter's even gone so far as to show people in Venezuela how to use it via SMS, so that, to basically get around the government's efforts to block it. And here in the United States, we use it from everything for like talking about a fire yesterday in San Francisco, a very big fire, and getting information out about that, to to the weather service might use it to announce a tornado.
So without Twitter, when Twitter crashes, why can't posts just sort of fail over to Facebook or Google Plus or some other place?
Well, I don't think that, the thing about Twitter that's different than Facebook is everything's public, right? So like, let's say that one of my friends does share some information on Facebook. It's much harder for me to disseminate that information and make it kind of go wide in the way that you can on Twitter. And in Google Plus, I mean, I don't think Google Plus has the network effect that Twitter does or that Facebook does, and I don't think people are looking in on it as often. Although it does have that nice real-time nature and the ability to make things public, it's just not, it's not out there in the way Twitter is.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I personally use Twitter as a kind of a feature of Google Plus. I use a service called Friends Plus Me to auto-post my Google Plus post to Twitter, so I get kind of the best of both worlds. Now, why can't Twitter technically stop crashing? I mean, I would imagine that if, say, Google or some other company was running the show, they probably wouldn't crash as much. Is there some problem within Twitter that prevents them from being able to keep their site up and make it as reliable as it really should be?
I don't know. That's something I don't have an answer to. I was very surprised that it went down when Ellen had everybody retweet that during the Oscars, and Ellen had everybody retweet that selfie she took, which that seemed odd. I can't imagine something like that happening at, say, Google. But the 30-minute outage yesterday was something that you just don't really expect to see. I mean, I know it happens at other companies too. I mean, you know, Gmail was down, I think, 6 months ago or so, or maybe even more recently than that, for quite a while. So, you know, it certainly does happen at Google. Can I ask you something about something a previous guest said?
Yes, please do.
Just did I hear correctly about say that they thought Snowden should be tried and shot?
David?
Yeah, that's a bit of hyperbole, but I think jail and treason would be an appropriate charge. Yeah, I think the charge has been filed, actually.
I mean, I find that kind of incredible, like that someone called for him to be shot or.
Well, that is what we do during war times to traitors.
Okay. We
are at war. Information that's been released appears to be of value to our enemies. It is probable that American forces have been placed at greater risk because of this information that's been revealed. It's not just watchdog stuff. It's not just spying on you Americans.
I think that's nuts. I think that's totally nuts. But you know, you're certainly entitled to that opinion.
And you as well. It's a great world.
Yeah, I think he's done a valuable service. I think that's a completely bananas opinion. But
well, here's an. And I appreciate you chiming in on that topic as well. It's obviously highly controversial, and of course I think that again, I think the majority of people in this space in technology journalism would probably agree with you, Matt. But that's one of the reasons that we wanted to have David on this, because there is another point of view there. So I appreciate that. But speaking of nutty ideas, and back to your story, given Twitter's role, I mean, the logical conclusion of the idea that Twitter is a core component of the global communication system, something very vital, something that saves lives in emergencies, something that is a part of the chain of news gathering and news dissemination. Should it really be run by the company Twitter? I mean, should it be taken over and run by some kind of international organization or something?
You know, that's a great. I mean, that's a great question, and it's something that in Twitter's early days, there were a lot of people saying like Twitter is too important, or Twitter could become too important for it to be run and organized by one company. Now, I mean, what's happened has happened, and you know, there were certainly some competitors to Twitter early on that were doing the same kind of thing that aren't around anymore, doing something similar that aren't around anymore. You know, and there have been these efforts like Identica and App.net to make a a less centrally focused version of Twitter. But you know, I can't imagine a government stepping in and taking that ability, taking that away from them, or necessarily even doing it well, which is, so we've got the Twitter that we've got, and we just have to hope for the best with it, I think, right now.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I would certainly agree with that. Well, Matt, I want to thank you for coming on today.
Thanks, Mike.
I really appreciate it. You can find this story and other Matt Honan writings at Wired.com, and I recommend everybody go read this piece. It was fascinating reading, and which is why we wanted to have you on. You can also find Matt on Twitter at Matt, M-A-T, 1T. All right, thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
All right, in a sec, we're going to talk about a stunning new capability by a mobile app you may already be using. But first, I want to tell you about NatureBox. What is NatureBox? NatureBox is a company that makes healthy snack foods you can subscribe to like it's a magazine or something. It comes right to your door, and they have enormous variety. Now, of course, it's easy to talk tough and to say that you're going to eat more healthy, but as well as I do, that when the snacks are lying around the house, if you're like me, you're going to jump on them and eat them and, try to be healthy later. Well, later never comes. So it's a good idea to have snack foods coming to your door by mail. Of course, you can select by your dietary needs. So if you're a vegan, or you want soy-free or gluten-conscious or lactose-free or nut-free or GMO-free snacks, all of their snacks are free of all of those things, or many of those snacks you can take your pick and choose your the type of limitation that you have with your diet. You can also select by taste. So if you like savory things or sweet things or spicy things, I like all of those personally, you can choose accordingly. Now, they have a really interesting system. They send you a bunch of snacks, and let's say you absolutely love a few of them and you only merely like a few others, you can go on their website and tell them which ones you want to keep getting, and the ones that you don't select, those will be replaced by other flavors which you can try. So you're constantly trying new flavors. They have so many flavors. It's really kind of astonishing. More than 100 different types of products. These are things like barbecue kettle kernels, French toast granola, chili lime pistachios, which are amazing. And again, more than 100 of these kinds of flavors. 0 trans fats, 0 high fructose corn syrup, nothing artificial. So this is vastly superior to the junk food that most of us snack on all the time, and it's really a good idea. And again, it's very delicious. So remember, to get 50% off, half off your first box, go to naturebox.com/twit. So stay full, stay strong, and go to naturebox.com/twit. And we thank NatureBox for their support of Tech News Today. And I recommend sourdough cheddar pretzels. These are astonishingly good. Highly recommended. Well, in other news, the Starbucks mobile app is getting new features starting 1 week from today on March 19th, at least for users in the US, UK, and Canada. Like the current version, the app will let you find stores and pay for your latte. But the new version has a killer feature. You can tip your barista between 50 cents and $2 after you've paid for your order. But that's not the killer feature. No, the best feature is that if you change your mind, you can take it back and untip or detip or whatever it's called, and reach into the virtual tip jar and take your money back. You can also increase the tip if you're feeling more generous once that caffeine hits your bloodstream. So check it out 1 week from today. Well, David, I want to thank you for coming on today and guest co-anchoring Tech News Today. I really appreciate you coming on.
Always happy to liven things up.
All right, well, thank you. We appreciate it. Well, you can email us at tnt@twit.tv. You can leave us voicemail by calling 260-TNT-SHOW, and we encourage you to do that. And we definitely suggest that you subscribe to our subreddit at technewstoday.reddit.com and follow our social pages by searching for Tech News Today on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, and YouTube. Also, don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight, at 4 p.m. Pacific tonight and every weeknight. My name is Mike Elgin. Thanks to you for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow.